Inside Vision is brought to you by New England College of Optometry.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Inside Vision. I'm Howard Purcell, and along with my cohort, Eric Lilligren, we're happy to welcome you to reopeneyecare.com, the industry response. Eric, we're happy to have our audience with us again today, and hopefully they have found the information we've delivered over these past 9 weeks to be helpful and interesting. And I know you continue to traverse the country and lots of businesses, not only just optometry, but today I think you're out in Texas. Tell us where you're at, and hopefully we'll have a chance to engage with some of the practitioners that are involved in the practice there. How's it going, Eric?
It's going great, Howard. Good morning. How's everything with you?
We're good. We're good here in Boston. Weather's beautiful, you know, and that phase return at this point that I know a lot of people are around the country. We're in phase 2 now, which is great. We've moved from just essential care, which we've been able to provide throughout, to now looking at what would be considered, I guess, more routine care. We're doing it slowly, right, like a lot of people are. I'm sure you're seeing it there too. You know, when you have the small volume coming through.
Everywhere. I'm at Vision Source Arlington. In Arlington, Texas, outside of Dallas. And, you know, I have been here since about 8 o'clock this morning local time, so 9 o'clock Eastern time. And, you know, patients have been piling up in the parking lot, and they're coming in to, you know, get their reordered contacts and glasses and things of that nature. We've got the practice working even as we speak right here.
Fantastic.
Some of the staff has been getting ready for the day.
Hey, let me ask you this, Eric. We noticed... Hi, everybody. By the way, Eric, we noticed. Eric, can you hear me?
So yeah, it's just the start of a day here, Howard.
Can you hear me, buddy? Eric, can you hear me okay, or can't quite hear me at this point?
I can hear you.
You can hear me. Okay, just a question for you. We noticed in the other locations you've been, you weren't even able to walk into the building without a mask. Today, we see you walking around without a mask. Things have evolved, clearly. What sort of precautions that you're observing as this practice taken?
Well, your question is right on time because I'm now with Dr. Isaac Shunk.
How you doing?
Hello. Hey, Isaac, how are you?
Good. So practice-wise, you know, for us, you can see the table at the front. We moved that to kind of create social distancing for a lot of our front desk staff. You know, masks generally get worn. We generally give the patient a mask when they come in. The doctors generally wear them for the most part too. You know, between every patient, you know, the rooms are getting disinfected with the Pure and Clean solution that we use. And then same thing, like we have hand sanitizer all over the place too for the patient. So, I mean, just kind of like the standard precautions that, you know, I think a lot of practice are kind of taking right now.
Yeah, because we've seen
what about,
you know, either required masks or not required masks. What is it that, what are the guidelines and what is your feeling about masks? I know it's very, very hard to do business with masks on.
It is. I mean, you know, you get a variety of patients when it comes to this. It comes to, you know, mask wearing. You get some patients that come in that just don't want to wear masks at all. They just refuse. They don't think it's, you know, they don't agree with it. You know, the ones that do, you know, like they're worried about everything. They're worried about, you know, it's, you know, my opinion is, you know, it's better to be safe than sorry on a lot of that stuff. And so, you know, some of the studies, you know, that you're looking at showing, you know, decreased spread by like, you know, 70%-ish when it comes to mask wearing.
So people are just starting to feel more confident to be closer to one another in this area.
Yeah, I would agree. And we got, you know, we got all our slams too. We got those breast shields too. So, I mean, just trying to keep that as much distance as possible.
Yeah. So we have some other guests that are on the program. Howard, do you want to spend some time getting into that? And then we can come back with Dr. Isaac in a little while. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but could you ask him just one quick question for us?
Well, he can hear you. He can hear you.
Okay, perfect, Isaac. So, Isaac, if you wouldn't mind, how has the support been from industry? Do you feel like you've gotten support from industry throughout this pandemic? Has the industry stood by you? Have they supported you in ways that you could recognize at this point? Any comment on that and how that's gone so far?
I mean, from an industry standpoint, I mean, I can really speak from the Vision Source standpoint on a lot of this stuff. You know, Vision Source has been great with their support with, you know, rounding up PPE for the practices. They've been great. I mean, just this Vision Source in general with the whole the webinars and everything else that they're putting out for us to getting some of this information out to the providers and docs. Because I'll be honest, if it wasn't for Vision Source, I would have a very difficult time navigating, you know, everything that's been going on with this pandemic. So,
and we've got some guests that Howard's going to bring into the conversation here that are actually providing resources via a new website that'll be a complement to everything you're learning from your own business environment. So yeah, I think Howard, this is perfectly timed to learn how independents can gather all the information that's out there from multiple sources.
Without a doubt. So without further ado, then, why don't we go ahead and introduce our guests? Thank you, Isaac. We'll come back to you in just a moment. We appreciate your insights. So we're fortunate enough to have today three wonderful guests with us. Today representing reopeneyecare.com. Joining us today is Dr. Katie Greiner. I've had the pleasure of working with Katie in several other activities. She is a contact lens specialist. She also serves as the Chief Operating Officer at Northeastern Ohio Eye Surgeons, as well as the Optometric Director for Refractive and Elective Services. Welcome, Katie.
Thanks, Howard. I'm happy to be here.
We're very happy to have you here. Also joining us is Justin Manning, also an optometrist, and Justin serves as Executive Vice President for Professional Strategies at Healthy Eyes Advantage. And Justin, we actually had Jim McGran on with us a couple weeks back, and Jim did a wonderful job of giving us at least a high level of what's been going on at HEA. And we're anxious to hear from you and the great work you continue to do really in both areas, in the reopeneyecare.com, but also HEA, and the great support HEA has continued to provide to our colleagues. So welcome, Justin.
Thanks, Howard. I appreciate the opportunity to be here.
You bet, buddy. Good to see you. And then the early riser out on the West Coast, my old friend Dave Shute. Dave, welcome. Thrilled to have you here. Those of you who've been in the industry for more than a day have confronted Dave somewhere along the way. He has made so many contributions to our profession. Dave currently serves as the co-founder and CEO of Thin Optics. But he also is a global omni-channel eyewear. Well, they are a global channel eyewear company. Forgive me. He's also the president of I2C Ventures, a company he founded back in 2003. Dave, welcome, and thanks for getting up so early this morning.
Thank you for you, Howard. Anything. Happy to be here.
I appreciate that, buddy. So listen, we were just talking to one of our colleagues there out in the field, in the trenches, like I know Katie is and Justin was. Curious from you guys. So, how is this whole concept of Reopen Eye Care conceived? Kind of, what is the mission? And maybe Dave, will let you take a first crack. It's my understanding that you've been helpful in the website content development, et cetera. Can you give us a little background on the whys and what you guys are trying to achieve?
Sure. So when the whole coronavirus, hit and began the outlines of it began to become clear. Obviously, everyone began to think about it in the context of their families, their lives, their businesses, and in my case, businesses and some not-for-profits. But a number of us who are of a certain age and have been around for a while, Jim McGran being one who David Friedfeld, who you spoke about earlier, who runs Clear Vision, Jamie Rosen, who runs a chain out of Chicago, Mark Farrar runs Jobson, a number of others, Marty Bassett at Wallman. All of us began to worry about what would the impact of a sustained shutdown that could last a year. Or maybe not the shutdown a year, but the economic consequences of social distancing. What would that do on our industry with 26,000 independent eye care practitioners? The Dobson data says 80% of them have less than 2 months of cash on hand to handle operating expenses, right? And whenever you have this sort of massive economic event that's out of most people's experience, you run the risk of large-scale bankruptcy. So many of us initially on an informal basis began, sort of talking about this, and Friedfeld would call McGran, would call Ferrara, would call Shute, would call Rosen, would call Bassett, et cetera, and all of us are either entrepreneurs or run companies and have for many decades, and many of us have seen this movie before in some variety, and so I think we were all fairly concerned that without some central resource. As the gentleman that was with Eric mentioned, it might be difficult for many of the practices to navigate this difficult economic event. So through these discussions, it evolved into, okay, in order to help 26,000 practices navigate the economic consequences of coronavirus, let's set up a website. Let's go through all the data that's available, all the information that's available, curate it, put it in sort of logical buckets, only put up the stuff that's actionable, helpful, and thoughtful. Have some 100,000-foot stuff to really think about, how do I think about this, right? How do I think about surviving the shutdown? How do I think about the recovery? How do I think about navigating through the cash flow consequences of having low sales volume? As well as some very specific stuff. What are the rules and regulations? How do I get PPE? How do I deal with the PPP? And what are the rules and the regulations around that? So the overall purpose of the website, and it's a non-commercial website. Nobody's making any money. This is all done on the side. Initially, the original group were all volunteers. Justin was brought in by Jim to actually bring in somebody that knows what they're talking about. And he wisely has helped give us an advisory board, so we have people that are also in the trenches and know what they're doing, and smart people like Katie, who also knows what she's talking about. Again, the only purpose of this is to have a tool that can be useful for individuals to guide their practices through this journey. And I think it's our view is this is not a light switch. You just turn it on and you go back to business and it's life as usual. Our concern is this is a very long process. And, we're seeing some generally good stories as practices are reopening. Maybe 60% of them have some degree of confidence that their cash flow is fine, they're managing through it. 30-40% not so sure. We still don't know what's going to happen if as we reopen, there's resurgence, what happens in the fall. As the initial pent-up demand peters out and you get more competition, more doors open, so your daily sales are 30-40% below average, what happens to your cash flow? So we think that we need to manage methodically through this process, focusing on things like cash flow, money in the bank, demand, communicating with consumers. So everybody comes out of this hole and at the far end end up being healthier and a more efficient, leaner, better organization, as opposed to running out of cash halfway through and having to shut down.
Wow. Well, listen, you know what? I salute you guys for the effort you're making. This is such an important effort for our profession. And Katie, maybe you could comment. I love what you guys are doing. Is this going to be basically, you're an aggregator of information, or will there be original content coming from this? And are you, Katie and Justin, are you guys the ones ultimately responsible for some of that new content?
Yeah, so Justin recruited a wonderful panel of people that are in all different forms of eye care. I'm in an OD/MD practice, so I also had to take into account the surgical nature of reopening our centers, along with our eye care, routine care, surgical. And then the team also consists of opticians and private practice optometrists. And so I think we will be using material that's out there and gathering from trusted sources like our state associations and national associations, but also the things that we've done through trial and error in our own offices. I can say that our office was, shut down on March 17th, and on March 18th, we came together with our board and made decisions quickly. And so hopefully with that experience of working on that immediately, I can share that with others through the website and help them learn from what we did right and what we did wrong too.
And I'm sure they will benefit greatly from that. So I get that you guys are going to aggregate what's already out there, but is it also your intention to create new content?
I think there's absolutely an opportunity for new content creation from the standpoint of the advisory board in general. Again, we're all in the industry. I'm not in practice anymore. So as we curate, as we create, really the opportunities are endless as time goes on, as we see the market change, as we see demand go up, we see demand kind of peter out. The opportunity to respond to that with new content. And when it came to putting together the advisory board, as Katie mentioned, we have representation from opticianry, we have ophthalmology, and we have private practice optometry as well. We really looked for individuals who could bluntly look at the content and look at the ideas that we're generating and say, you know what, that's fantastic. That's really helpful to offices like mine. Or on the other side, say, you know what, that's great, but that does me no good at all. Don't put it up. That's a waste of my time. So really the opportunity to say from a ground level, this is what I need right now, and then be able to make changes, updates to the site, and to that content. But certainly from videos, opposed to new content creation, again, based upon that on the ground, day in and day out experience. Absolutely, there's opportunity for that.
What's great. You know,
And
I love how our. Please, Katie, go ahead.
I just wanted to say I love what Justin said, because it is going to be real and updated content. You know, you can Google a webinar that happened in March, and that data is already null and void, and things have changed. And so that's where that website's going to be so helpful, because it is going to be constantly tweaked with the newest guidelines and the newest practices. So people have a place they can go for accurate and new data and information.
And you're so right. It is so dynamic, seemingly. I mean, there was a point in time where it seemed like every hour things were changing. So what a great resource to have. By the way, if I identify as a practitioner something I think is great information that would be helpful to my colleagues, are you looking for people to send you stuff to say, here's something I think that could be very useful to be added? Is that the way you're populating? And do you encourage people to contribute in that manner? And Justin, maybe you can take that one.
Sure. So, and again, that's the whole part of the whole point of creating the advisory board. So, as Dave shared the evolution of how the group came about, certainly, that group is not the only, experts in the field and the only list of candidates that could be a part of the group. So, as new ideas, whether that's coming from the field or from the industry or both, the advisory board exists really to look at that content as new suggestions come in, because, Howard, as optometrists, we get together and the only thing that we talk about is optometry. And so we're constantly in communication with our friends and our colleagues who are saying, hey, this is working, this is not working. I read this great article. This was a really beneficial video. So we're inundated with that, with those ideas. And so we're naturally going to be getting new content, new ideas from the field. And so again, that's the goal of the advisory board, to help curate and take that new information and pass it on up to the website.
What a fantastic idea. My hope would be that even post-COVID, when we're on the other side of this, having an aggregator of information like this continues to be important. And I hope you guys, the plan would be, and Dave, maybe you can comment on this. I hope the plan is to make this something sustainable. And by the way, maybe you could also comment, Dave, on kind of who's behind this, who is really the organizer. I mean, you mentioned some people. My understanding is the Vision Council has something to do with this. I guess industry. Could you just try to address those two issues, if you don't mind?
I'd be happy to, Howard. On the issue of timely information, it's been interesting watching the discussion change, right? Because when you shut down, your concern is, well, how do I survive? I've got no revenue coming in. I've got all these staff members. What do I do? So issues like furlough, borrow money, manage cash, eliminate unnecessary expenses. How many months of on-hand capital do I have? Borrow, whatever. That's the thing. Then when the reopening starts, well, how do I do refractions in the context of social distancing? Eye care is a contact sport. I've got, eyes that I got to be close to, and it's an aerosol. How do I manage that, right? So then once I'm reopened, that's yesterday's news. Now how do I manage patient communication or telemedicine or whatever? So as the whole reality evolves, we want to try to get rid of what's not relevant, find what is relevant, put it up. And then to the extent that we need some customized content, we'll try to create it. But we view ourselves primarily as an aggregator, and having really, really smart people like Katie and Justin on board, grounding us in reality, saying, well, no, that's not that important, but this other thing is. That helps keep us where we want to be, which is actionable, practical, helpful, etc. So there's like a cash flow calculator, so you can manage your cash flow by inputting just a few basic pieces of information. Or as the government modifies the PPP program, we have somebody managing and updating that information and thinking about rules and regulations. We're thinking about creating industry data. Ed Buffington at GPN, John Ryan at United Healthcare have all sorts of data, and Mark Farrar at Jobson have all sorts of data about what's happening to the number of exams in the country, what's happening to the number of contact lenses dispensed or the frames sold. How does that break out on a regional basis or on a practice type basis? So you can see an index of business activity versus pre-COVID, and you can then begin benchmarking yourself and seeing, well, where am I relative to my peers? Am I ahead of the curve, behind the curve, whatever? We're going to do our best to try to be a useful tool to practices that are out there. So that's question one. Question two is who was involved. So I mentioned some of the names. You had, and I'll go through it so as not to forget. But Jim McGran is running HEA. I think was really one of the early founders. David Friedfeld is running Clear Vision. Has been in the industry forever. It's a family business. I think they had an initial concern about what happens to this industry if you have a mass extinction event and you have 6 months of impaired demand. Can you have 25, 30,000 practices survive long enough? Right. That's a animating concern. Mark Ferrara, who runs Jobson, similarly had some concerns. At the time we were having this discussion, we weren't seeing any industry organizations standing up and helping out. So that sort of began and animated the discussion. I got involved in roughly that time. They reached out to Gary Gerber, who runs, Power Hour, who's obviously been an optometrist and is a well-spoken one. Brought Gary into the conversation. Brought Marty Bassett at Wallman, who sees a broad range of ECPs for a variety of, as a supplier. Ed Buffington at GPN, who sees a lot of data and has kind of a data-based approach to managing practices. John Ryan, who manages the eye care health section of United Eye Care. So there's a range of individuals. I think I got everybody. I'm sure I get killed by the person I didn't remember. A range of individuals who all come at this from a different point of view. We had a number of discussions. No egos, just trying to be helpful. Jim reached out to Justin and brought Justin in early again, who brought a voice of reason along with us. We then reached out to the Vision Council. So Ashley Mills, who, as you know, runs the Vision Council, and basically said, we aren't really entirely sure how we want to do this, but we think a website would be a useful way to disseminate good information. And we've pulled together a ton of content. We've created a Dropbox file folder. We've thrown away irrelevant articles. We found good articles. Would you work with us? She was completely on board with the program. She assigned Maureen Bettis and her team. Within really, I think a week and a half from the time we began talking to each other, they had a website set up. Our attitude was it better to have it be good and fast as opposed to perfect and 6 months from now. And so they really leaned into the project. And I think all of us felt, again, nobody's making money. Nobody's selling anything. Nobody's trying to put their company's logo all over the place to get some ancillary benefit. We've all been in the business long enough. We have a lot of affection and friendships. And as you know, Howard, same thing, right? You have your lifelong friends that you've met over the years, and some can own practices and some can run businesses, whatever. You just want to help as many people through this mess as we can. So I think everybody just leaned into this with that sort of animating motivation and behavior. And that's kind of gotten us to where we are today. Pulling somebody like Katie on board, who is just wicked smart, very thoughtful, without the benefit of our website, she figured all the stuff out on her own. She's darn smart. Is exactly the kind of person you want to have involved, because you want the smartest people that are very thoughtful and methodical and practical, advising you to make sure that we're doing the right stuff. So
you bet. You go. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate it. So Katie, maybe you could address this one. All types of optometrists, ophthalmologists will find this site valuable. Is this more tuned to independent, private practitioners, or do you think really it cuts across all channels of optometry and ophthalmology, I suppose?
Yeah. First of all, thank you, Dave, for your comments. And definitely there was trial and error, but this has been a fun thing to work through and celebrate successes. I really think Reopen Eye Care is for everybody. And I would actually say it's for your staff as well. I think that's a core group that we need to remember that can also go on here. But yes, ophthalmologists can benefit from it. There's a lot of stuff from their academy on here. There's a lot of surgical information as well. But the private practice optometrist, the corporate optometrist, I think it's for everybody. And it's such a time saver if you spend time on this website and really realize what things are on there. Even as far as signage for your office, that we were clip arting together, and I will tell you that's not the side of the brain that I use, is that artistic side. There are signs on there that have the pictures and the messages of this has been sanitized, wear your masks. There's social media content that you can put out there so you don't have to sit with your marketing team and develop it. It's already there and ready for you to use, all free at your disposal. So this website is phenomenal, and I can't wait to see what more we can do with it.
Fantastic. So Justin, you've learned a lot, I'm sure, during this process of participating in this. We have an opportunity to talk to a lot of our colleagues here. So maybe, advice for colleagues, mistakes to avoid, things you've learned during this process that you think might be helpful for others.
Absolutely. And that's one of the unique opportunities that I have in my role with HEA, is to get to talk to doctors on a regular basis and really see, this whole process of the biggest mistake I guess I would jump out with is don't go this alone. Leverage the industry, leverage your partners, leverage your sales reps. Everybody in the industry is really committed to the success and recovery, the growth, and really the advancement of eye care in general. So even if you fall in, as Dave mentioned at the beginning, that sort of 60% that we're seeing are, their demand is up, their capture rates are up, they're doing relatively well during this time frame. Even if you're in that 60% category, there are still tools, there are resources, there are opportunities within the site, within, as you talk with your colleagues and your friends. Again, collaboration is key. And even if you're doing well, there's great resources available to help further drive that success that you're having. So when it comes to, it's interesting seeing those higher capture rates, that pent up demand. Are we preparing now for if, and again, hopefully that if doesn't happen, but if that demand tapers off, what are we doing now to prepare for that? Katie's practice did a phenomenal job of patient communication. That's the beauty of optometry and eye care in general, is the cradle to grave service, the ability to see those patients throughout the lifetime in your practice. So you build relationships. You're their family eye doctor. So as you communicate, they want to support you just as much as you want to continue to deliver the best care possible. So staying out in front, communicating with your patients, letting them know these are the things that we're doing. We're committed to your health care. We're committed to your eye health. And getting in now is important to maintain not only your vision, your cognitive health, but your overall systemic health as well. And so again, that I would go back to the collaborate. And if you're in that 40% category, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. There's a lot of success happening. So if you're in that, I'm still struggling, I'm not sure where to begin. Again, the Reopen Eye Care website is the place to start. I thought it was interesting. A lot of jobs, some of the Jobson data back, probably now several weeks ago, before kind of the first wave of reopenings, there were the data showed that 90% of people who responded to the survey said, hey, I'm going to reopen my practice. There's no chance of me shutting down, or there's no plan to shut down. But at the same time, only 43% of people responding actually spent the downtime working on their business. And the same percentage said that they actually had or were working on a written plan for reopening and ramping back up. So having that plan in place, and it's not too late. Even if you're open and you're struggling to get patients in the door, you're struggling to capture eyewear sales and fill your books, it's not too late to start planning. But the big thing is start planning now and execute on that plan, follow up with that plan, and keep things moving forward.
Wow. Great words of wisdom. Thank you. You know what? It makes me smile, and I see Dave smiling as well, to see our young colleagues and how astute they are and how much they're contributing to this profession. I got to tell you, when I was early in my career, I think I was so much more clueless about what was really going on in this profession. And I really admire, Justin, what you and Katie and so many others continue to do in contributing back so early in your career. Katie, perhaps we'd like to give you an opportunity to address that same question. What have you learned during this process? Any key watch outs for our colleagues? Anything you'd add to Justin's eloquent description there?
I don't think you should feel bad if you aren't busy right from the get-go. You have to plan for a ramp up. You might think, oh, I have all this pent up demand. I have to get all these people in right away. And you just also have to keep everyone safe and healthy at the same time. But now that we've been reopened since May 4th, we are seeing that things are much more comfortable. The public is more aware of what, the protocols are, such as wearing a mask in our facility and the safety of, keeping them in the car before they come in for their appointments so that we don't have a lot of traffic and bodies moving around. But I think we said, okay, we have all these patients we need to get in. Let's do everything we can to get them in right away. And that won't work. But you can see that every week you get more comfortable, then you can continue to ramp. And I will tell you, a month now into it, we're almost back at our normal patient flow, but with ways that we do it safer. Again, I said, the car, waiting in the car, not having their families in with them because we want to eliminate too many people in the building. That alone, if you aren't doing that at your offices, that alone really saves on time. Not having as many family members. I don't know what that'll look like in the future. I know that they like to be there and support their family member in the exam room, but we've had them on speakerphone and that's worked really well. Some of them have been on FaceTime with us. We've been able to talk to someone's loved one to tell them about their glaucoma, but they're not in the exam chair, and that saves on our cleaning time too, because there's less bodies. So I just think be realistic, but know that you can get probably back to a normal flow if you do it the right way and in a calculated manner.
Fantastic. Eric, I think you are on the line there with us somewhere, I believe. We can't see you, but if you are, say hello. I don't know if you have a question for Kate. There he is. Okay, fantastic. Hopefully you've been able to hear the great suggestions and ideas.
We've just been hanging out in the background, Howard.
Well, we have gotten some great ideas and some great insights from Dr. Greiner, Dr. Manning, and Dave Shute, he contributes here and there as well. But what can you say?
No, it's great. I heard most of it. I've been moving around the practice here a little bit and catching up with Dr. Shunk here. But
perhaps
information is coming together.
Sorry, Eric. Yeah, so perhaps we can ask Dr. Shump, but he's listened to this. What words of wisdom might he have for his colleagues as he has prepared the comeback? And I know everybody's at different phases. Texas a little different than Massachusetts, a little different than Ohio, a little different than California. What has he learned and anything that he'd like to contribute to this discussion?
I mean, I think it's just some of the stuff that you guys have already touched on. I mean, just kind of hang in there on a lot of this stuff. I mean, we're finding the exact same thing about a month into this. We're pretty much about as busy as what we were before. So, I mean, things are going to get better. And I think, just like I said, just hang in there and keep doing what we're doing and kind of chugging through. And I think things are going to go back to normal here pretty quickly.
Fantastic. Yeah, what are you doing to make your
about here, Howard? Is just the notion of confidence and not being afraid and being adaptive. To the situation, tapping into resources like our guests are providing, which is a phenomenal service to the industry. People need eye care. There's a demand for it. There is that pent up demand. It's a question of how do we bring it back through the practices safely, the notion of not bringing groups, the notion of wearing masks where appropriate, and then not wearing masks where it's safe to do so in certain environments, because looking at Lori Sorensen's practice in Austin, Texas last week, they have a no mask zone where people are they're buffered from other people and they're with only their immediate family if they're in fact visiting as doing several appointments, and they have the opportunity to take off a mask and try on some eyewear without that unusual distraction that we're not used to. So I think it's really a taper in, and I think, Doctor, you'd agree with me?
No, yeah,
it's a taper in and getting used to the new stuff and just being safe and just focus on confidence and keep doing business. That's the theme that I'm hearing on the road out here across America.
Isaac, we're thrilled that you are back to normal volume. That is incredibly encouraging for the rest of the country as we all sort of phase back in. There was always these questions. Is there truly this pent-up demand? Will we see that? And clearly you've done a good job there in Texas of making your patients and your staff feel comfortable. And we congratulate you on that. It's very inspiring to hear your story. So, Dave, let me come back to you for a minute as we start to wind down here a little bit. And I know for you and I, the teaching old dogs new tricks is a little tougher, but what have you learned during this process that might be helpful to share? Because I know you're a learning guy. You learn every day. I know that. So what have you learned through this process, Dave?
Well, I think if you aren't learning, you're falling behind. And so you always want to have an open mind. And I think on a personal level, I'm always amazed at the great people in this industry, regardless of age, who there's at their core, they want to help out. There's Jamie Rosen, who runs Rosen Eye Care Family Practice, 45 outlets in the Chicago area. If Jamie was a purely self-interested person, he wouldn't contribute to helping out at ECPs because he'd pick up the business, right? But he was all in. Everything he learned for his 45 chain store that he thought were useful practices for managing, safe social distancing while refracting and managing a dispensary and whatever, he shared. And really the same is true of so many other folks, and you can see it with Katie and Justin and obviously and others. So one is just it's comforting in today's world to really see that good humans want to help out. I think the other piece is how do you manage in these very uncertain times? And I'm a bit concerned that this movie is not over yet. We've got data from Johns Hopkins, that shows the resurgence of transmission by county and state. It's picking up quite a bit, unfortunately, and that's before the return of the fall and fall-winter, right? And there's a possibility that we won't have any kind of vaccines or antivirals until well into next year. So there's a possibility that, consumers become concerned once again with transmission, and that could have a suppression on demand. Or as all practices open up, that demand begins to spread amongst corporate chains as well as independents. So I think we have to be able to navigate this in the months to come. And as Katie has done and talked about, adapt to an environment where you can't have a whole bunch of people sitting around in a waiting room and maybe they're sitting in their cars and maybe demand is a little bit below what it used to be, but still be able to have cash flow that's positive. And if that means adapting telemedicine, internet communication, dealing with people on FaceTime, radically changing how you operate, but do it in a healthy, logical, safe, and practical and efficient way, then that's how we all get through this. And I think I'm personally learning how individuals are adapting to this in very concrete ways, and it's very encouraging.
Fantastic. Thank you, buddy. Well, as we start to wrap things up, I was hoping maybe we go around the horn here quickly. We sort of have a tradition here at Inside Vision to ask you a little bit about any other than the wonderful website, reopeneyecare.com, which we know has a ton of great information. What is it you guys are reading or referencing these days? And it could be directly related or indirectly, but I've had so many great ideas through these 9 weeks of great books to read, great reference sources. So maybe Katie, we'll give you the first crack at this. What have you been looking at, or any references you might recommend to our colleagues that could be helpful at this point in time?
Honestly, for optometry type references, I've really been using our associations, especially our state association. Ohio has a strong association, and my colleague at Northeast Ohio Eye Surgeons happens to be the president of the Optometric Association in Ohio, Beth Muckley. But on a personal note, I've taken some of this time of the quarantine to read more of those MBA-based books. I reread Good to Great, and I think it's just important to look out there at some of those management books as you try to get your staff on board and get everybody on the same bus to move forward safely and know that we can do this and have that confidence. And books like that really, I think, help drive good businesses.
Fabulous. Thank you, Katie. Justin, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think when it comes to these plans for reopening that I was talking and recovery, as I was talking about earlier, the process takes leadership, and the owner of the practice, the manager of the practice, you're a team, you're a family. You cannot do this without each other. And so when it comes down to knowing how to lead effectively, how to get your staff comfortable with the process, how to get your team on board with really the vision that you cast for your practice's recovery. I'm a huge Pat Lencioni fan, so I could list all of his books, but that would take a while. I highly recommend those. A book that I recently finished is called Candid Conversations. A great way to have those tough, challenging conversations with your team, with your staff, with your patients. COVID-19 has affected us all in many, in very, very big and detrimental ways. And so the ability to have those challenging conversations, to lead effectively, is really a key piece to this recovery that frankly, I don't think that we talk or think about as often or as much as we should. So I'll deviate from optometry specific resources and recommend those leadership resources for practice owners and managers.
Thank you,
Candid
Justin. And
Conversation
by the way,
was great. That's a great book, Justin.
absolutely. Got an extra vote of confidence on that one. By the way, this is an opportunity for perhaps for you to put in a shameless plug, but I know you are out there with information that you're sharing with people that goes over and above what's happening at Reopen Eye Care. Do you want to just briefly mention where people can hear more from you and your perspective on things?
Well, sure. As Dave talked about, this is an a company, apolitical, this is a no ego. But if you're going to give me the opportunity to plug Healthy Eyes Advantage, I will. Certainly, a lot of the things that we have done in response to this gets back to the heart of Reopen Eye Care, is to provide the tools, the resources in a timely manner for our more than 10,000 members nationwide. So we've been very proactive in communicating with our members. When the PPP came out, we were right there with, here's how to apply, here's ways to use it. Now things certainly have evolved since then. On the Reopen Eye Care website is our complete recovery reboot program, which we rolled out over the period of 6 weeks. Comprehensive checklists, focusing on business strategy, your patients, your staff, your physical space, and your vendors, just to make that planning process so as easy as possible. We created videos to go along with it. We moved our education from a live environment to online interactive. Last month's event had over 1,150 optometrists from across the country and actually internationally as well to attend 8 hours of CE. We have another 4-hour live event coming up here in a couple weeks. So again, just listening to our members and taking steps to provide those resources. So I could keep going, but I don't want to plug EGA too much. So thanks for the opportunity to play.
Absolutely great. No, I think it's important for our colleagues to understand all the available opportunities they have, and thank you for sharing. So, Dave, thoughts from you? I know you're a guy who likes to read a lot and has lots of great references. What might you recommend for folks today with all we're going through?
Well, I'm not sure this is directly relevant, but it is in a 100,000-foot view of the world. I just happen to be reading a book called The Code, which is the development of the Silicon Valley starting about 1930s. And it's an historical novel about how we got to where we are, not only in Silicon Valley, but as a modern society. And you see all these technological innovations that lead to the microprocessor, to the transistor, to the PC, to the internet, to ultimately Facebook, Google, whatever. And it spans however 70 years, whatever. What strikes me, and I think it's relevant to this particular instance in this website, is in the midst of the 1970s oil crisis and the 87 collapse and the collapse in 91 and 2000, in the worst of times, amazing innovations come out of that. And sometimes the most innovative, best thinking comes out of challenging economic times, because we're forced to think in new ways and act in new ways. And the people that operate with open minds, they're learning, they do better and they survive. The people that just shut down and don't collaborate and don't learn, they may perish, right? And so I think great difficulty in the environment can lead to fantastic innovation coming out of that environment, number one. Number two, yeah, you hear stories about lone inventors, Steve Jobs or Zuckerberg or whatever, but these are all collaborative events. All inventions are collaborations of other things that preceded it, right? And if you get the best minds thinking about stuff, engaged in fierce debate about what's the right answer, you tend to be better off. And I think that that's what we're doing here as well. We're taking the best ideas that people have, eliminating the redundant ones, tilting them up, and letting people make decisions about what's right for them and their own individual circumstances. And I think if you're an entrepreneur or in business in general, you have to be fundamentally an optimist, but you still have to apply critical thinking, methodical thought, test and learn, try it. If it doesn't work, don't do it. If it does work, double down on it. How do I deal with people use Facebook or FaceTime, whatever, as Katie has said. I think these are principles that have served us well as a society and a species. I think it'll serve us well as an industry and in the owner of a practice.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it. We're going to go back to Eric. Eric, are you out there? You and Isaac out there still? Got another minute for us before he goes back to see some patients. You there, buddy? Hello, Eric. Are you there? All right, good. So I understand that.
I actually, I have in listening to everybody here, I almost feel like we need a new section on the Inside Vision channel called New Tools. There's so many things being developed, and I heard Dave talking about entrepreneurs and positivity and confidence. And Doctor and I want to show something new that has been fundamental to his practice here, and it's called AIMS. I'm not sure if you can see that, but this is an advanced inventory management system. And Doc, why don't you tell us about this tool and what you're doing?
And so it started in our office by the Reserva guys, but what it's basically allowed us to do is more or less take a 3, 4, 5 hour process of doing an inventory of our frames and so forth, and take it down to about a 2 to 3 minute process. In the world of decreasing reimbursements from insurance when it comes, on the glasses side of things, we pretty much, as optometrists, as doctors, we pretty much got to squeeze every penny possible out of our practice. And, maintaining a good inventory, know what's moving, what's not, is just one way of really doing it. So it's really been a game changer for us.
How does it do what it does?
You talk about how the system works. Basically, all they do, every single frame in our practice is RFID chipped, and so we know kind of when that frame's moved, when that frame leaves, and then basically every day my staff just basically takes the RFID gun and just goes over the office. So it takes about 2 to 3 minutes, and I pretty much have a complete inventory, know what's sold, what hasn't, what's been moved, what's not, and it's been a great system.
And this is powered by a cell phone on the side?
Yep.
So, an iPhone, does it work with other phones?
I don't know. That's what works for us. So yeah.
All right, and this is just one of many things that are being developed for this new business situation that we're in, and share with you, Howard.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you, Isaac. Thank you, Eric. We appreciate it very much. I also want to say a big thanks to our guests. Dr. Greiner, Katie, thank you. Thank you for the continued work you're doing in educating our colleagues and playing such an important role in how we move forward. We're excited about reopeneyecare.com. We hope everyone will go visit. Justin, thank you for everything you continue to do. Stepping away from practice, I know, is a big decision, but the contributions you're making will impact so many more people, and congratulate you. If there's ever a time we can help support what you're doing, either through Inside Vision, through New England College of Optometry, whatever it may be, even though you two are not NECO grads, I still love you. It's okay. But all kidding aside, we would be happy to assist and support the things you're doing. And Dave, what can I say? The contributions you've made to this profession are immense. Everyone knows that. You continue to do it. You never rest on your laurels. You're always trying to push the envelope. I know how many people appreciate what you continue to do. So thank you. Thank you to the three of you for joining us. We appreciate it very much. Look forward actually over the next couple of months to bringing you back and hearing about how things are going and how this is growing and developing. And I know our listeners got a lot out of the information you've provided today. So thank you again. We look forward to seeing everybody next Wednesday morning at 9:30 or on our YouTube channel anytime on Inside Vision. We appreciate you being with us. Next week, we're going to have a great show again for you. Hope you enjoyed today. And without further ado, as we always like to end, something to think about.
As you're approaching your reopening strategy, there's a couple of different things that come to mind.
Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it very much.
Guess yourself. I have two simple words for you. Please don't. There's absolutely no playbook for what we're going through right now. But you know what there is? There's a lot of resources that are available to you, like reopeneyecare.com and other industry partners that have been there in our corner since the very day that this COVID emergency started. When you start to look at these resources that industry has brought to us, it offers a wide array of tools to really help you become successful in this reopening. The other thing to remember is a simple thing. You've always got basic business fundamentals to rely upon. Number one, do some goal setting, both short, mid, and long-term goals. Remember the SMART method, setting a goal that is measurable, achievable, realistic within a specific time frame? Use that method, very effective. Don't forget to delegate effectively. Bring your whole team on board so everybody's moving in the same direction at the same time. Always monitor your progress and don't be afraid to reassess your process. Sometimes those need to be adjusted to get to the endpoint appropriately. And last, but certainly not least, make sure that you prioritize and are proactive about your communication, both to your external customers and to your internal team. Look, there's absolutely not one single way that's going to be important to follow to make your reopening successful. But the nice thing to know is that you've got a number of different tools that our industry has brought to you that can really help you be successful. And you know what? That'll help you make good decisions, and it'll also give you some peace of mind. I'm John Rimpakis, and that's something to think about.
Thanks for watching Inside Vision. To receive updates about our programming, click subscribe.